Hello, everyone. Pastor George here with today's episode of A New Thing, and we're doing a movie review. It's been a while since we've had a chance to do that, right? So this will be exciting. All right, let me start us off with our passage for today. Ephesians 6, 10 through 12 is what we're going to do today. So it says, Paul says, "Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places." So this is the famous armor of God passage. If you know Ephesians, you might be familiar with this. It's pretty commonly talked about in a lot of Christian circles. You'll see lots of art or other things depicting it. Very popular, right? And I remember, like, for G3, this was one of our memory verses and things like that, right? So it's very, very popular way of understanding it. And this became a pretty important passage in my understanding of a movie that I saw yesterday. And I went to see Wake Up Dead Man, which is this movie right here. But I first just want to talk a little bit about, this is a Knives Out movie, so it's a murder mystery movie. If you haven't seen Knives Out, there's Knives Out, the original one. They're all by a director named Rian Johnson, who's probably most famous / infamous for directing the I always forget this. 8th Star Wars movie. whatever one that one was. That one was not very good, in my opinion. But he directed that one. He kind of is infamous for that. But not that I was like a huge fan of any of the new Star Wars movies, but that's by the by. He was famous or infamous for that. He's had other projects before, but really after that he started making these murder mystery movies. Knives Out, which I saw in theaters when it came out, and I thought was very good. And then he made Glass Onion, which is also I thought pretty good. And it's and all these are mystery movies, and they have to put a Knives Out mystery under the new ones because they want people to know it's a sequel or whatever. But you can view these like you would an Agatha Christie movie. That's what they're kind of modeled on. And so each one is standalone. You don't have to watch the others to enjoy whatever else. The most important thing to know is that there's this main detective in the middle, played by Daniel Craig. His name is Benoit Blanc. You can kind of even see in his name, right, the reference to whatever his name is, the Gusteau, where the Agatha Christie detective, right? It's still his Frenchy name, although he's from the South and he has like one of those foghorn leghorn accents that he's doing the whole time. So it's pretty funny. It's very entertaining, both these movies. Definitely not for kids, right? They're all rated R, mostly due to cursing. The violence in them is usually comedic, that I remember. And they're just loaded with like social commentary, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the new one, right, this is Wake Up Dead Man, and this is obviously, as you can see from maybe two of the characters there and the big church in the background, right, this takes place at a Catholic church. That's the kind of setting for this. One of the priests is murdered, and you have to find out who did it, right? So obviously, I'm not going to talk about that angle of it. I'll just give my general impressions of the movie, which is that I liked it. One of my problems with Rian Johnson's whodunit movies and whodunits in general is one of my guiding philosophies is the audience should be able to figure it out and follow along with the detective. If you get to the end and the solution relies just on like special knowledge that wasn't given to the audience, I think like it's a weaker mystery movie. And that's actually true, in my opinion, of all of these movies. What makes them entertaining is not so much the mystery portion, although that can be entertaining. Although you'll never figure it out because it just doesn't, I don't think, give you enough information to let you figure it out. Is really the wacky characters that are in it. And so they always have these ensemble casts. You know, this one had Josh Brolin, Daniel Craig, Mila Kunis, Jeremy Renner, and a lot of people like Glenn Close, right? People you recognize maybe from some things, um, but yeah, so very good acting and directing. And there's these cool shots, especially kind of during the revealing scene with this contrast between light and darkness and stuff like that. Really well done. Um, but one of the things that these movies are big on is social commentary, and so each one of them kind of tackles a different facet. And I don't think it would shock anyone who's seen these movies. Like, it's very obvious that Rian Johnson is left wing, because the people he attacks are the usual, I would say, left wing targets. So like this first movie, right? Like, it's rich people. Those are these people. Oh, everyone is like part of this rich family, besides the maid, right? And it's about money and trying to get the money and things like that, right? So you have that aspect. In this one, it's about a tech billionaire, right? Who is very kind of like Elon Musk coded type of person. One of these Silicon Valley type people. And the people in them are also generally kind of right wing coded. And the same thing here, right? Like you look at this and you'll go to the movie and you'll see the way these characters are described. And maybe if you aren't very politically aware, you might not pick up on it, but it's very obvious. They're caricatures. So the problem with doing something like this is that you're not going to convince anyone, because very few people are actually like that, right? Even people who you might think are like that don't see themselves in that way, so you're not going to convince them anyway. Even though it might have some helpful or biting or stinging commentary there. I've always kind of just shrugged at those things and be like, yeah, it's funny, but there's not really meat there. Unless you just want to laugh at people you disagree with, which I guess we all do, right? But the real interesting thing for us is the religious aspect of this, because faith is an important thing. So like religion is the target here, especially these right-wing religious figures who will use fear or hatred in order to empower their messages, and that's summed up in this priest right here, Josh Brolin. That's kind of his character. For online clicks, and I think this is a valid criticism of things that are going on right now, right? That is happening. People are absolutely using religion in order to push their politics, because that is just a big thing in our moment right now. And so it just is I don't think that it's not a critique that's completely off base, and you kind of have a contrast between him and this guy right here. His first name is Josh. I don't remember his last name. He's an Irish or English actor, but he plays the other priest, and he's a much more kind of what you would want in a pastor type of person. He was a boxer before, and so he's kind of turned his life from one of the motifs, and this is the beginning of the movie, is right, like Jesus isn't like this, he's like this. Right, so instead of boxing, his arms are wide open, right, and that's a thing that goes through it, and that's what inspired me to choose this, because really that is at the core of the movie what it is. It's like, should the church be aggressive? And this is what I took away, right? Should the church be aggressive and angry and on the move, fighting against the world, right? Because the world is against us. I mean, you could look at this and read that, right? But the important thing is that, like, we realize that there are spiritual forces in the world that do attack the church, that are lies, right? But the flip side of that is we do not fight as the world fights. And that's kind of what Josh Brolin's character wants to do. And so you have this tension that is there. And of course, there's a murder mystery wrapped up in all of this, about that. And there's other themes covered as well: greed, shame, all sorts of things that are there. But I think that's like the big one. That's the driving one that's there and pushes it. And so it's one of these movies that I'm really conflicted on, about how I feel, because it's kind of like another movie I saw, I think I reviewed for this channel, Heretic, where it's like, man, it does say some interesting things, but you gotta fight through a little bit of the uh, the fedora tipping Reddit atheist type of moments in the movie, because Benoit Blanc, the character played by Daniel Craig, is an atheist, and he makes it very clear in this movie. And of course, like, I don't think a movie has to, uh, in its own sayings or whatever, in its own way, like, take a Christian position on everything, especially if that's not the role of the idea of the director or whatever. I mostly care about religion being represented fairly. And that's, I mean, maybe if you're going to Knives Out for anyone to be represented fairly, it's not a good point. But I actually think Rian Johnson is much more fair to religion as a concept than he is to, like, any of these kind of right wing people that he's making fun of, right? So I will say that. But if Benoit Blanc has some moments that really brought me back to the late 2000s, early 2010s. He calls God a fiction. He just, throws it off, and he says Christianity is all about sexism, racism, homophobia, transphobia, all those types of things, right? It's like a kind of a Reddit or Tumblr talking point. And if any of you don't know, right, these are like websites online where people will often have these ideas of like these really cringy kind of atheistic things, right? So here are some memes. I just pulled them up, right? So, like, they're always wearing fedoras. It's a way. This started off, believe it or not, started off as something cool, and then it was taken by the internet and used to make fun of them. And, like, people some people unironically think, and myself included, that this actually did help stop new atheism. It's just like sometimes just making fun of something is over the top, right? So there's this one, and then there's this one, who would win? Countless talented philosophers, theologians with sophisticated versions of the cosmological, teleological, ontological, moral, and historical arguments for the existence of God, or a guy who comments Sky Fairy on every Facebook post about religion, right? Like, and that's kind of what Benoit Blanc is like, which is kind of unfortunate because he's supposed to be a very smart character, and even in past movies, when it's clear he's like disagreeing with what's going on, he's not as virulent as he is in this movie, and I don't know why that is. But it was still cool to see a really well represented religious figure in this priest. Father Judd is his name, which I liked. They're all kind of wacky characters, but I think he's not depicted as a idiot or as someone who doesn't know things, which it would have been really easy to do if you wanted to, right? And you could have just made Benoit Blanc the only smart guy, which he often is, actually, in these movies. So that's not always true. There's usually him and a sidekick, and the sidekick is always kind of smart and witty and things like that, and not as smart as he is, but kind of tagging along, sort of thing. And that's present in kind of like the Watson to his Sherlock, I guess. But that changes every movie depending on what scenario he's in. So I would definitely, like, I think if you're into murder mystery movies and if you can stand coarse language or whatever, it's supposed to be funny, and go into it. I think you'll really enjoy it, just for kind of the interesting aspect of it, right? I mean, the thing about the Knives Out movies is just people really aren't making movies like this anymore. I mean, how often do we see murder mystery movies, original murder mystery movies, right? Like, I think Kenneth Branagh has remade a few of those Agatha Christie movies, and I saw two of them and they were fine. I liked them. But, like, how often do we get original ideas? And, I'm always going to give it to someone who writes and directs their own thing. I give a lot of credit to that. It's very rare in Hollywood these days. And so I'll give Rian Johnson tons of props for that. And so I would recommend it. I think, like, as a Christian, walking away from it, I think we can take the criticisms and go, yeah, the church should avoid doing some of those things, wrapping itself in the flag, or putting politics or our own kind of issues of who we are in the pulpit, rather than putting Jesus in the pulpit, right? And realizing that Jesus doesn't fight like this. but he fights like this. I think that's actually a pretty good thing to remember about this. So, all right, well that's all I have to say about that movie. Um, and yeah, I'm gonna keep plugging away, doing what I do every Thursday. So I hope you guys found that interesting and that you all have wonderful Thursdays. I'll see you in worship on Sunday, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Peace out.